How on earth have these players never been number one? Not even once. Seriously, when you see the names on this list, you'll think we're joking. But nope, these golf legends have never officially been the best in the world. Let's first start with number 15 in the LPGA Tour. And let me say that sometimes you're the right player at the wrong time, and sometimes you're just a few years too early to cash in on your peak. So, meet Paula Creamer, the Pink Panther herself. If you watched women's golf in the mid-2000s, you couldn't miss her. Pink everything. Clothes, accessories, even pink golf balls on Sundays. She was like a walking brand. And at 18, she became the youngest winner of a multi-round LPGA event. By 2010, Paula was absolutely crushing it. 10 LPGA Tour wins, including that magical US Women's Open victory at Oakmont, coming back from thumb surgery just months earlier. She reached number 2 in the world rankings and was America's sweetheart on the golf course. But Paula's peak years came right before women's golf exploded globally. Right before players from Korea, Thailand, and across Asia started dominating the sport. She was winning tournaments when the tour was smaller, the competition was different, and the depth wasn't quite what it became. After 2014, everything changed. Paula managed just one more win while dealing with wrist injuries that kept her sidelined for months. Meanwhile, the game evolved around her. Suddenly, there were 20 players who could win any given week instead of 5 or 6. So yes, the Pink Panther had all the talent, all the charisma, all the marketing appeal. She just happened to be reaching her prime right as women's golf was about to enter its most competitive era ever, and that ended up working against her. At number 14, we've got something totally different. This one's going to sound crazy because we're talking about someone who's only 28 years old and has already won 2 majors. Meet Collin Morikawa. This guy burst onto the scene like a man possessed, won the PGA Championship in just his second major start, then grabbed the Open Championship a year later. By age 24, he was already being called one of golf's next superstars. But despite all that success, despite having one of the most impressive iron games you'll ever see, he's never been number 1 in the world. Not even for a week. The closest he came was number 2, and he actually spent some serious time there, which makes this whole thing even more bizarre. We're talking about a guy who could probably thread a needle with a 7-iron from 170 yards out, who became the first American to win the European Tour's race to Dubai, who went undefeated in team play at the President's Cup. So what's the deal? Well, timing is everything in golf. Just when it looked like Morikawa might finally break through to the top spot, Scottie Scheffler turned into this unstoppable force. 1 minute Collin's chasing Jon Rahm for number 1, the next minute Scheffler comes out of nowhere and just takes over the entire sport. It's wild to think about. Here's a guy who's already accomplished more than most golfers ever dream of, and he's still got decades left to play. Probably he'll reach the number 1 spot, but the question is, when? Now, number 13 takes us to a player who climbed to 4th in the world ranking with his win at the 2009 Players' Championship. But by the start of 2012, he'd fallen to number 230. We're talking about Henrik Stenson, and this might be one of the most brutal collapses we've ever witnessed. Plagued with a bad case of the driver yips, Stenson couldn't even win his own club championship in 2011 after he failed to qualify for the PGA Championship. This is a guy who had been mixing it up with the world's best players just a couple of years earlier. Stenson clawed his way back up and reached his career-high ranking of number 2 in December 2014. Just 1 spot away from golf immortality? Then came 2016 at Royal Troon. Something magical happened. In what many consider the greatest final round duel in major history, Stenson went toe-to-toe with Phil Mickelson. While Phil shot a bogey-free 65, Henrik fired back with a stunning 63, setting a major championship record at 20 under par. He became Sweden's first male major champion in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Some said their performance was better than the famous duel in the sun. Yet even after this moment of pure perfection, even after achieving golfing greatness, Henrik Stenson never quite reached that number 1 spot. Sometimes being almost perfect just isn't enough. Here we are in the LPGA Tour again, and this is someone who absolutely deserves way more recognition than she gets. Anna Nordqvist might be the most underrated golfer of the last 15 years. 3 major championships spread across 3 different decades, 9 LPGA Tour wins, a career-high ranking of number 4 in the world. Yet somehow, she's flying completely under the radar. But her story is gold. Listen, she didn't even pick up a golf club until she was 13 years old. Most pros start when they're toddlers, but this Swedish powerhouse just decided she wanted to play golf as a teenager and somehow made it work. She's been the backbone of European Solheim Cup teams for over a decade, hit the first hole-in-one in Solheim Cup history, made 8 consecutive teams, recently named captain of the 2026 European squad. She's the only non-American woman to win majors in 3 different decades: the 2009 LPGA Championship, the 2017 Evian Championship, and the 2021 Women's British Open. But that number 1 ranking never happened. She peaked at 4th in 2017, which honestly feels criminal when you look at her resume. Whatever the reason, she deserved better. But those 3 major trophies? Those speak for themselves. Coming in at number 11, we have a story that made an entire nation hold its breath. April 11th, 2021, Augusta National. A quiet guy from Japan standing over putts that carried the weight of history on his shoulders. Hideki Matsuyama didn't just win the Masters that Sunday, he shattered a barrier that had stood for decades. The first Japanese man ever to win a major championship. When that final putt dropped, you could practically hear the celebration echoing across the Pacific. The guy had been knocking on the door for years. He reached number 2 in the world rankings back in 2017, spent 119 weeks in the top 10, won tournaments all over the globe. He's got this incredible iron game, smooth, precise like a machine. His approach shots are works of art. Yet despite all that consistency, despite being Japan's biggest golf superstar, he never quite made it to that number 1 spot. Next up, number 10. Here we're diving into something that should make your head spin. Get ready for a story that shows just how brutal timing can be in professional golf. Davis Love was a machine. This is a guy who racked up 21 PGA Tour wins, spent an incredible 466 weeks in the world's top 10, and had one of the sweetest swings you've ever seen. 5 weeks at number 2 in the world rankings, 5 weeks of being 1 spot away from the summit. In 1992, Love went absolutely nuclear, won 3 tournaments in just 4 weeks, starting with the Players' Championship. You'd think that kind of hot streak would rocket him up the rankings, right? Wrong. He went from 12th in the world to 8th. Back then, the world rankings moved like molasses and it cost him big time. Fast forward to 1998, Love finally climbs to number 2, breathing down Tiger's neck. And I mean really close. Just 1 point separated them for an entire month. But this was peak Tiger Woods era. The guy who would go on to hold that top spot for a ridiculous 683 weeks total. Love was caught in the Tiger hurricane, and there was simply no getting past him. Love had all the pieces. Major championship in 1997, dominant seasons. That picture-perfect swing everyone talks about. In any other era, he probably spends years at number 1, but this wasn't it. Moving up to number 9, we've got someone who basically grew up in front of our eyes. Remember that 12-year-old who qualified for the US Women's Open back in 2007? Well, that little kid became one of the biggest names in women's golf. Lexi Thompson was supposed to be the future of American women's golf, and in many ways, she was. 11 LPGA Tour wins, including that breakthrough major at the 2014 Kraft Nabisco Championship. She was long off the tee, fearless under pressure, and had this incredible ability to rise to big moments. Her career high? 4th in the world rankings back in 2017. Not bad, right? But the thing is that Lexi was always just a little too inconsistent when it mattered most. Those streaky performances that kept her from making that final jump to the top. Like at the 2017 CME Group Tour Championship, the season-ending event. Lexi was leading by 1 shot heading into the final hole. She had a 2-foot putt to win the tournament, and with it, she would have finally become world number 1 for the first time in her career. But she missed it. Just like that, the lead vanished. She went into a playoff and lost. No trophy, no number 1 ranking. Just a gut-wrenching reminder of how close she came. Sure, she had all the talent in the world, all the power, all the heart, but the difference between greatness and near greatness is just a matter of inches. At number 8, we're telling a story that's equal parts triumph and heartbreak. Jose Maria Olazabal was poetry in motion. The Spaniard won 23 times on the European Tour, 6 times on the PGA Tour, and captured 2 Masters titles. He spent over 300 weeks in the world's top 10 and reached as high as number 2 in the rankings. His short game was so good it was almost unfair. But in late 1994, just months after winning his first Masters, Olazabal started feeling severe pain in his feet. What began as discomfort turned into something far worse, rheumatoid arthritis that left him unable to walk properly. In 1995, he had to withdraw from the Ryder Cup. By 1996, he missed the entire season. At his lowest point, Olazabal genuinely believed his career was over. There were days when he watched tournaments on TV, seeing his peers playing the game he loved, wondering if he'd ever compete again. But then came the comeback. After finding the right treatment, Olazabal returned in 1997 and won just his third event back. 2 years later, he slipped on that second green jacket at Augusta, one of the most emotional victories in Masters history. Yet despite everything, the talent, the wins, the incredible resilience, that #1 ranking never came. From one Spaniard to another, ever heard of a guy who made golf look like magic? I'm talking about someone who could pull off shots that made crowds lose their minds. At 19, Sergio Garcia hit a shot from behind a tree that had everyone asking, how the hell did he do that? This kid had fire, pure passion, the kind of talent that made you think he'd own every major championship by the time he was 30. Instead, he spent 18 weeks sitting at #2 in the world rankings, watching someone else hold that top spot. Garcia played 74 majors before winning one. Think about that math for a second. Almost 2 decades of showing up to golf's biggest stages and walking away empty-handed. 4 times he finished second, 12 times in the top 5. Each time, the same question. What's wrong with Sergio? By 2012, even he started believing the doubters. After another crushing defeat at Augusta, he actually said, I'm not good enough. I don't have the thing I need to have. But sometimes life has other plans. At 37, when his career looked like it was winding down, Garcia found himself back at Augusta, 2 shots behind, ball in the bushes. The old Sergio would have thrown a tantrum. This one, he just smiled and got to work. When that final putt dropped in the playoff, 20 years of pain melted away in an instant. He finally had his major, but that elusive #1 ranking, still out of reach. Number 6 brings us to South Africa and a story that starts with actual lightning. No metaphors here. Retief Goosen was just 15 years old when he was struck by lightning while playing golf. He was found lying motionless on the fairway, unconscious, his clothes burned off, and without a pulse. Doctors thought he might never walk again. But within weeks, the Iceman was not only walking, he was swinging a golf club. Goosen's comeback was nothing short of miraculous, and his career became the stuff of legend. He went on to win 38 professional tournaments around the world, including 2 U.S. Opens in 2001 and 2004, outlasting the best under pressure. His smooth, unshakable putting stroke earned him the reputation as arguably the best putter of his era. Yes, even in Tiger's prime. He topped the European Tour's Order of Merit twice, played on 6 President's Cup teams, and spent 274 weeks inside the top 10 in the world rankings. But somehow, he never reached world #1. His highest ranking, just 3rd. With a game that combined ice-cold nerves and deadly precision, Goosen had everything except the top spot. One of the greatest players never to wear the crown, but he sure came close. Sliding into our top 5, and trust me, you could not believe these players never made it to #1. This one takes us to Scotland, to a man who dominated European golf like nobody before or since. Colin Montgomerie, Monty to golf fans everywhere, won the European Tour Order of Merit 8 times, including an absolutely ridiculous streak of 7 straight years from 1993 to 1999. No one's even come close to matching that dominance. With 31 European Tour wins, he's the most successful British golfer in that tour's history. He spent nearly 400 weeks in the world's top 10 and reached as high as #2. His driving was legendary, his iron play was surgical, and in Europe, he was basically unbeatable. Thing is, he has 0 major championships. 5 times he finished second in majors but could never get over the line. The 1994 U.S. Open playoff loss to Ernie Els. The 1995 PGA Championship playoff heartbreak. The 2006 U.S. Open where he had it right there and couldn't close. And that's the cruel irony of Monty's career. In Europe, he was the undisputed king. Across the pond in America, he was just another very good player who couldn't win the big ones. The different style of courses, the different crowds, something just didn't click. Number 4 brings us to one of those players who just quietly go about their business. Never say much, never make headlines, just show up and play incredible golf. That's Steve Stricker in a nutshell. This guy from Wisconsin spent 12 weeks at number 2 in the world rankings. And somehow, nobody talks about him when they list the great players who never reached the top. But the man had a putter that was basically a magic wand. We're talking about someone who ranked second on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting in 2011. His peers constantly called him one of the best putters in the game. There were stretches where he was gaining over a shot per round on the field just with his flat stick. But he wasn't flashy. No fist pumps, no dramatic celebrations, no controversial comments. He just rolled in putt after putt, with that same Odyssey white-hot putter he'd been using for nearly 2 decades. 12 PGA Tour wins, including a World Golf Championship. His best year came at age 42 in 2009 when he won 3 times and finished second on the money list. He spent over 250 weeks in the top 10 of the world rankings. Yet somehow, in an era dominated by Tiger Woods, Stricker never quite broke through to that number 1 spot. You've reached our top 3, and this one belongs to golf's ultimate bridesmaid. And when I say bridesmaid, I mean it in the most brutal way possible. Jim Furyk spent 39 weeks at number 2 in the world rankings. That's the second highest total in OWGR history. But the thing about Furyk is that he was consistent in ways that should have made him unstoppable. This guy had 17 PGA Tour wins, spent 360 weeks in the top 10, and had a swing that looked like an octopus falling out of a tree, but somehow worked better than most textbook swings you've ever seen. In 2006, he won the Varden Trophy for lowest scoring average, while Tiger won literally every other award that mattered. But again, timing is everything in golf, and Furyk's timing was absolutely cursed. He broke into the top 10 in 2000, the exact year Tiger was having arguably the greatest season in golf history. When he finally climbed to number 2 in 2006 after winning the Canadian Open, check out these numbers. Furyk's points average was 8.90. Tiger's, 22.8. That's not even close. Furyk won his major at the 2003 US Open, but by then he was deep in the heart of Tiger's absolute dominance. He stuck around the top 5 until 2010, grinding it out year after year, but there was simply no oxygen left at the top. Next up, number 2. And this is the only player on the list who might have actually reached world number 1, if a nightmare hadn't ended everything. At the time, he was playing the best golf of his life, winning majors, climbing the rankings, just starting to dominate. But Payne Stewart wasn't just known for his game. He was impossible to miss. The knickers, the Tam O'Shanter cap, that vintage style made him stand out on every fairway. And behind the look was a player with serious firepower. 3 major championships, including US Open wins in 1991 and 1999, and 250 weeks inside the world's top 10. That 99 US Open win, legendary. He drained a 15-foot par putt on the final hole to beat Phil Mickelson by 1. That fist pump celebration is now immortalized in bronze at Pinehurst. And just weeks later, at the Ryder Cup, he showed his class again, conceding a hole to Colin Montgomery to protect him from a hostile crowd, even though the match was still tied. Then, 4 weeks later, he was gone. A plane crash at age 42 stopped a career that was still rising. He never reached number 1, but he might have been the only one on this list who truly would have. Instead, Payne Stewart left behind something even greater, a legacy. And finally, number 1. Or maybe I should say, the one I wish wasn't here at all, because this one might be the most shocking entry on our entire list. Phil Mickelson. 6 major championships, 45 PGA Tour wins, and over $94 million in career earnings. By any measure, this is a Hall of Fame career that most golfers could only dream of. Yet somehow, some way, Lefty never spent even a single week at number 1 in the world rankings. He did spend 270 weeks at number 2, though. That's the most in OWGR history. 5 years and 2 months of being tantalizingly close to the summit, but never quite getting there. And who was ahead of him for most of that time? Well, take a wild guess. See, Mickelson turned pro in 1992, right when he should have been the next big thing. Instead, Tiger showed up in 1996 and basically said, "Thanks, but I'll take it from here." For the next 2 decades, whenever Phil was playing his best golf, Tiger was right there playing even better. From 2001 to 2002, Mickelson was stuck at number 2 for 46 straight weeks, while Tiger sat comfortably above him. Every single week, Phil was the second best golfer in the world, watching Tiger hold that top spot like it was his personal property. Even when Tiger struggled with injuries and personal issues, Phil couldn't capitalize. In 2010, after winning his second Masters, he came within half a point of Tiger. Half a point! But it still wasn't enough. 6 majors, $94 million earned, and a legacy that'll last forever. But Phil Mickelson's career will always come with that one asterisk: the greatest player never to be number one. Oh, and now that you're still here, we have another great video for you to watch. Enjoy!